Come take my hand and see the world around you. The time is right, just let the light surround you. And step by step you feel it coming alive, the feeling deep down inside.
The best memories are made when you take the road less traveled. Visit wanderingbutnotlost.com for some inspiration.
Today on Wanderings In, we are spelunking across America. It is Cave Week. Who would have thought there was such a thing? But apparently there always has been. It shows you how much I know. But I have always been a cave fan. And I believe it was last week, Jan O'Brien, you made the Batman reference to me and caves, which I think might actually have been why I love caves.
Where is Batman? I thought you would have Batman in the show today.
He's back there somewhere, actually hiding. I don't know if you can see him, but anyway. But you know what else I was really thinking about this? A couple other places in my life actually used to mesmerize me with caves, and this is not going to be a surprise to any of you that listen to the show very often. But there was an attraction at Disneyland back prior to 1978 that was called the Train Through Nature's Wonderland. And at the end of that attraction, you went into this big show building, and it was the Rainbow Caverns. And you went through there, and there were stalagmites and stalactites and waterfalls, and it was all beautifully lit with all these different colors of the rainbow, and there was all this music that played. It was my favorite part of that ride. And going through there, just like, oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Knott's Berry Farm has something very similar in their Calico train ride or mine ride, where they go through a cavern like that with beautiful stalagmites and beautiful features and formations in there and all these colored lights. So that was always something that I loved. And then I got to, when I was really little, started hearing about and started doing some, you couldn't do as much research back then. It was in the old World Book Encyclopedia.
Oh my Lord.
On Carlsbad Caverns and the bats that were down there in the cave. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. Well, when I was probably 10 or 11 or maybe 12, in that range, we went on a road trip one year and we went down to Carlsbad Caverns, and I fell in love with caves at that point. Actually going to a real live cave, as opposed to the made-up cave at Disney or Knott's, right? And Carlsbad Caverns at the time was kind of similar in a way, which is kind of funny because you would take this great tour. Carlsbad Caverns is one of the largest cave systems in the world. Not the largest in the United States even, but it's probably one of the most popular ones because of the size of the cave, the number of trails that are or paths that are in there, and it was also the bats from Carlsbad that have been so wildly, well known. But I remember when I was young, and back then they used to kind of light that cave very similarly. It wasn't all just white lights; it was colored lights in the caves. So you would walk down that cave in a tour. There was a ranger-led tour, and you would walk down that cave, and you'd go by these great, beautiful formations, and it just really put an imprint on my mind as a child, and I absolutely loved it. I love the coldness of the cave and the fact that the air is so still and the darkness, and I just love them. And Carlsbad Caverns, I believe the main area or at the very bottom of the cave where they actually, and it's still there today, a little bit modified from what it was like. There's a cafeteria they built down in the bottom of the cave. There's a elevator shaft that goes 750 feet from the surface down to the bottom. You don't go down that, you hike down, and then you take the elevator up. That's the way that cave tour was actually designed. But I remember when I was a kid, going to that, down to the bottom of the cave and getting a sandwich on white bread with crust wrapped in wax paper. And it was it was like going to a cafeteria at school. It was the coolest thing. I just thought it was the neatest thing in the world. And you're sitting there, these little tables inside this big, huge cave, and you're having your little sandwich. It was the coolest thing in the world. So I very, very made a big impact on me as a kid. Here's the best part. Well, to me, and there's a little bit of Carlsbad Caverns in my life every single day, because when I was a kid, they sold these little dioramas.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember seeing this?
I love dioramas.
I am going to bring it so everyone can see. This is the best thing I have ever purchased in my entire life.
Oh, I want to see it.
Okay. Here's the little diorama of Carlsbad Caverns.
Oh, yes.
Put a light over it. Oh.
Nice.
let's get it closer. You guys are going to feel like you're right there in the cavern itself. Oh,
that is cool.
it's the most
Very
awesome thing in the world.
cool.
Okay, so when I was little, of course, that was. I mean, I must have looked at this thing a million times when I was young, as I was.
How long have you had that?
Well, let me tell you, the original one I had.
Okay.
I bet you I will find it someday because this really truly was my treasure, and I will find it at some point. But I couldn't. It's in a box somewhere. When my wife and I went down to Carlsbad Caverns in 2002, I was joking because I figured there's no way they're going to have those anymore, right? So we did our cave tour, we did our whole thing. We were up in the gift shop, and we were looking around. And I mean, I was looking for it, so let's not pretend like I wasn't. And Laura was somewhere else across the gift shop. And I went around the corner, and there was a huge display of these very little dioramas. And I'm not kidding you. I screamed. And Laura was like, what happened? I'm like, honey, you have got to come here. They had red ones and blue ones and green ones and yellow ones. I'm like, okay, we're buying as many of these as we possibly. They cost like $2. It was ridiculously silly. I mean, so I'm like hoarding, buying all these things. I'm like, well, I can't find my one when I was a kid. I am going to take these other ones anyway. So we did have a couple of these, but I'm not kidding. I have one right above my computer, and there's one that's this one usually sits on the shelf.
There's more than one in the room?
Yes, because I have a blue one and a red one. Because the top is different. Anyway, I'm just saying, obviously, caves have been a big deal. So we have been to a lot of caves over the years in our wandering. There's 2 caves up in South Dakota, Jewel Cave and Wind Cave, that are both kind of on either side of Keystone. All caves are fascinating. To some degree, most cave experiences are the same. Have you ever been in a cave, Jan?
I was just going to ask you if you've been to. I don't think it's a true cave experience, but I think it is in Utah. It's in one of the parks in Utah, and I can't. Maybe I don't think it's Arches. It's something else, where you are down there and you're like, I don't know if I 100% would like it. I can get a little claustrophobic as long as I can see a way out or all that. I'd be okay, but I don't know. I'd have to. Not sure. I got to listen more about what your story is.
I just think what I love about them is it is just so mysterious, and the whole feeling of being in there is great. But like I was saying, every cave experience is very similar in some ways. You're down in that cold. It's usually 53 degrees, 45. I mean, it's anywhere between 45 and 60 degrees in most of the caves in the United States. So it's that cool kind of feeling. It's damp because most of the caves that you primarily think of, like Mammoth Cave or Jewel Cave or Wind Cave, most of the caves I think they're called solution caves, and they are primarily made from erosion, from water, and so there's usually water in these caves. There's other types of caves out there. There's lava tubes. There's they're made from volcanic lava and which form these tubes. I've been to several of those as well. And then there's sea caves all over the place too. I found out doing the research, the largest sea cave in the world is here at the Channel Islands, which, by the way, like I talk about all the time,
on your list,
is on my list to go to. But sea caves are fascinating as well. But anyway, so caves are a great experience, and most of them now, a lot of them now anyway, there's a self-guided tour you can take you through. Carlsbad is that way now. They have ranger-led tours, but they are down inside. Years ago, when we went we took a special tour. I think there were 15 or 20 of us on that particular tour. It was a hard hat tour, and you went off the beaten track. You had to kind of rappel down, not straight down, but you had to, by rope, go down inside the cave. And then there were parts that you were actually crawling, which you obviously would not like, Jan, if you said you're a little claustrophobic, crawling through spaces kind of in these caves. And they get you to a place in there on all of these cave tours where there's a ranger. They do this at some point. They turn the lights out.
Oh,
and
wow.
It is, there is no place on earth that you can experience total darkness unless you're in a cave. And you literally cannot see anything. You can put your hand right in front of your face. You cannot see it. There is zero light.
You're not fearful of that at all?
I like it. And then if they ask everyone to be quiet and complete silence, which once again you can't find when you're above ground.
That's intriguing. That
It
I might
is.
actually like that experience.
I'm telling you, it is really, really cool. I've got a couple pictures in the show notes of our cave experience. Obviously, we don't have a lot because it's, well, one, you're doing things, you're not taking pictures, but it's dark, so it's not the best photography.
Well, with the
zone.
new iPhone 11,
I
there is
know,
a night feature.
But it would be interesting, I guess I could dummy up a picture of what it was like when they turned the lights out because it was complete darkness, so it would just be a black film. Anyway, but it is really, really great, and a lot of the caves will have a different type of tour that is similar to that. In Jewel and Wind Cave up in South Dakota, they have a variety of different tours there, but they have lantern tours where you actually carry, it's all dark in the cave, but you carry lanterns around with you. It's not real strenuous, and as far as the elevation gain and all that stuff, but you're carrying lanterns like people would have carried if they were originally going into these caves, which always blows my mind. That these caves, many of them were discovered way back in 1800s, early 1900s before, and clearly it's not like they walked in and turned the light switch on. They're in these areas where there is just no light, so it was man-made, or carrying lanterns, or putting up torches, even that type of stuff. So those caves are awesome up in South Dakota. What's awesome about those caves is those caves are just as beautiful. Jewel Cave is a national monument, Wind Cave is a national park, but both of them above ground are absolutely spectacular as well. South Dakota is the land of the bison. I swear I've seen more buffalo up in South Dakota than anywhere, and the topography, it's just beautiful. So if you ever get a chance to go to South Dakota, there's more than Mount Rushmore up there, let me tell you. The caves are fantastic. Oregon Cave in southern Oregon is another smaller cave, but absolutely beautiful when you get inside it. It's not a huge cave system, but it is really, really great. And they have the greatest little national park lodge there. It's called the Chateau at Oregon Caves. Awesome little place that is it's right across from the cave entrance, and it's a really, and that is part of the experience, staying there, just the way it's built and the history behind it. In Sequoia National Park, there's Crystal Cave, which is a marble cave, so eroded by water, but there's a lot of marble inside that cave, and it is once again, there are fewer stalagmites and stalactites in the Crystal Cave. It's more of the water features and the way it has actually shined the marble inside that cave there is absolutely it's beautiful, and absolutely beautiful. That cave actually, until the early 2000s, was actually lit through a generator. And you could hear that noise pollution of that generator running. You could always hear out when you were outside and above the ground, outside of that cave. In the early 2000s, they replaced that whole generator system with a solar system. Matter of fact, there's a video in the show notes on this, which I think is just it's fantastic. So now all of that ambient noise from that generator is gone. So the area is back to more pristine, that natural place, but all of the cave is lit with solar lighting. Speaking of lighting in caves, I'm going to geek out on you here. Plants can't grow in caves because there was no light. So in all of these caves, they have to do yearly, or probably even, it's more than yearly. They have to do a constant cleaning to make sure that plants don't start growing around these lighting features, because they do.
Wow.
Because plants grow around light. So, and they're not natural to caves, and you don't want to get there and then start to kind of change the whole ecosystem of the cave itself. So they're constantly going in and taking the plants out of there. Carlsbad Caverns, when we went on our little spelunking tour there, which I really need to do again before I can't crawl, because it was really cool. They were talking about the amount of lint that comes off of people's clothing throughout the year. And they have volunteer cavers go in a couple times a year. Yeah. And will actually go in and de-lint the cave, right around the paths and right around the walkways in the caves, because once again, it's not something that is natural to the cave environment, but it's, no one is out there throwing lint around, but it just, people shed, right? So anyway, just to kind of wrap things up, because I actually could talk about it for a long time, because I absolutely love caves. But the bats at Carlsbad Caverns it is really an incredible thing to watch. During the summer months, there's up to 500,000 bats that actually roost there in Carlsbad Caverns. And they have a little bat amphitheater outside the main cave entrance. And as the sun goes down every night, these bats start coming out of the cave to do their nightly feeding. And to see 500,000 bats come out of that cave at night, and they go in a
how many?
500,000 bats.
Holy crap.
start swirling around out of that cave, and then up into the air, and you can see this stream of bats flying off into the distance. And they eat a lot of insects, and there's some plant life that they eat too. But they are out there doing their thing, and then in the morning they come back. We got up the morning at the day we were leaving there, the last time we went down at sunrise is when the final ones start coming back in, and to watch them come back in is actually almost better than watching them leave, because you're there with 1,000 people at night. In the morning, no one's getting up at 6.
Mm-hmm.
No one's harsh, but not as nearly as many people are getting up at 6. And it's great to be there with fewer people to watch these bats come back in, to hear their chirping, their sonar, and to watch them go back into the cave is absolutely fascinating. During the migration season, there's up to 1 million bats there in Carlsbad Caverns. So if you're not even a caver, and you don't even want to step foot in that cave, Carlsbad Caverns is a place to go just to watch the bats do their thing. It's absolutely incredible. And when you go there, you can pick up one of these really cool things, these cool dioramas. One other thing that I know that made me love caves when I was a kid at the I grew up in the Bay Area, and we used to always go to Pescadero Beach. It was kind of between Half Moon Bay and San Francisco. And we always called it Tunnel Beach because there was a big tunnel there that was cut out of the rock. But also farther down, there was all kinds of beautiful tide pools there. But there was one rock that was kind of out in the water. And you couldn't get to it when there was high tide. But when the tide was low, you could walk out to this big rock. It was a huge rock. And there was a sea cave in that rock. And we used to always go when I was little, all the way in time when I was in high school, we used to hang out in there. You would go there when the tide was low. You would go over to this rock. You'd go into the sea cave with your friends and hang out. And then we would always be like, sometimes it would get to the point where you would know the tide was starting to come back in. We're like, oh my God, one of these times we are going to get freaking stuck on this rock out here in the middle of the ocean. But that never happened, but it would be cool if that did. But anyway, I've always been a cave fan. I guarantee you, if you have not been to a cave and you don't have claustrophobia, or you are just really not kind of afraid of that, you will find them to be very, very, they're beautiful. They really are, no matter what cave you go to. And like I said, I've been to several. I need to get to Mammoth Cave, which is the largest cave in the world as far as the cave system goes. It's in Kentucky. It's one of those places, once again, it's not like on the way to anything else. I've actually researched just flying there, going to Mammoth Cave and flying home. It's from the pictures I've seen, it's a beautiful cave system too. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to do in caves across the United States. Now, if I've wet your whistle at all to the caves. Now, I started this by saying that who would have thunk you could spelunk during Cave Week, I guess. Here's the deal on this. 2021, International Year of the Cave, and I kid you not. International Year of the Cave. So over in the show notes, there is a link to the website that's showing all of the cave activities that are planned for 2021.
Well, there you go. We got to put it on the 2021 calendar.
Across the globe. So get to a cave, go find your park, people. There is so much to see and do in the national parks. I know I'm a broken record when it comes to that, but oh my gosh, it's a whole nother thing to be below the ground. So
this better be a goal of yours for 2021. And so let's throw it out there. What would be the area that you would want to go to? Is it Mammoth Caves or whatever you just said?
I want to go to Mammoth Cave, absolutely. But I started poking around on the website. I had to get off it because I was going down the rabbit hole. There's some beautiful caves across the world that would just be fun to go, to check out. I just love them. And I really want to get back to Carlsbad because I love that cave. It means a lot to me, throughout my life. Oh, I didn't mention the stat. The National Park Service oversees 4,700 caves across the United States. 4,700.
There's that many?
Caves everywhere. Now, most of them aren't open to the public, but still, they're on national park lands. Pretty fascinating. I want to go into every one. I love them.
All right. You know what? You got me really intrigued about this. I'll go check out the show notes and look at that. I think I've actually been in more caves than I'm thinking of. Having memories as you're talking about. Maybe somewhere in Europe maybe there was something in Europe when I was younger in the military. I definitely have that feeling of being somewhere where you could see. Oh, and I have a question for you. Stalagmite, stalactite, which one is up? Which one is down?
The stalactite comes from the ceiling. It's up because it's holding tight to the top.
Oh, is that how I remember it?
And the stalagmite is a mighty formation because they usually are bigger because it's the water droplets that'll fall down there and form that. They have a bigger base. So mighty from the bottom, tight from the top.
Wow. I've never had remembered that, so I think I'm going to have that now. Thank you very much, Adam.
You're very welcome.
Cool. Love.